Hello Fish Addicts, this is Eric from Fish Addicts located in Langley, BC. A lot of times I get often asked, where did this all start? It's a bit of a long story. I guess I started when I was probably about 4 or 5 years old. I had my first little 10-gallon fish tank, the old stainless steel frame. Kept a couple goldfish in it. Now I know that that wasn't such a great idea, but back in the day we didn't know any better. I had that for a few years. By the time I hit about 10 or 11, I was up to about 10 or 12 fish tanks. I was actually volunteering at a pet store in their local mall. At the end of the day, they would just pay me with a little bit of fish food, some community fish, tetras, danios, etc., etc. By the time I hit 13 or 14, I actually saved up my money and bought my first monster tank. This thing was huge. It was a 40-gallon breeder. And that changed my whole world on keeping fish. I thought I was the fish god, and it introduced me into some of the bigger species. And my first bigger species was the Oscar. At an early age, I always dreamed of owning a pet store, not aquatic only, but all pets. That did change as I got a little older. By the time I turned 18, I started actually working at the local fish store that I used to volunteer at, different ownership. They gave me an opportunity to buy a tank at cost. I ended up buying a Hagen 108-gallon, which is the biggest tank I'd ever seen at that time. That's when my addiction to monster fish really started to get rolling. I started looking for the pacus, the channel cats, the snakeheads, clown knives, all these bigger species. Then after that, shortly after that, I got my own place. I had a basement suite, and then I started building fish tanks. I used to build the plywood tanks with the glass fronts. I had multiple of those tanks, over 200 gallons apiece. And that's really when the addiction really kicked off. I ran with that for a few years. But due to work restraints back where I'm from in Newfoundland, I decided to leave. I came out west to BC. Within a couple of weeks of landing here, I managed to land myself a job with a huge aquarium store, a franchise. At that time, I never really had any furniture. I had this place, and right off the bat, I ended up with a set of 90-gallon tank stacked, one above the other, which I did saltwater in my top, freshwater in the bottom. I didn't even have a bed at this point, and I was already running 2 fish tanks, sleeping on an old folded couch that someone left, the tent left behind from previous thing. So I worked at that for a couple of years and decided to leave that part of the business behind. I opened up my own company in the renovations and construction, which I had a lot of experience with prior. I always kept a couple fish tanks around, anywhere from 180 to 220, 230 gallons. I did everything from reef keeping, plant tanks, but I always found myself going back to the monster fish, which was my true passion. By the time I was close to 40, I decided to take it up a little further, so I opened up my basement. I made a fish room. I had about 60, 65 tanks, anywhere from 10 gallons up to 220 gallons, I believe is my biggest. I just started to breed African cichlids. I just wanted something different, something to just perk my interest, because I had experience with everything else. And before I knew it, the babies that I was producing at such mass quantity of them, the hobby actually started to pay for itself. And that's when everything started to unfold in my life. So during that time, I had one of my display tanks. I had red belly piranhas, 8 or 9 decent sized fish, and I happened to get lucky, and they bred one time for me. So I started taking notes on what my water change schedule was and temperatures and everything, and I was able to actually fine tune it that I was producing thousands of red belly piranhas, to the point where I started using these guys, the babies, as feeders to feed my monster fish, my tiger shovel noses, my red tails, my gars. And it was a good source of food. It was just too many babies that any store could even handle. So several years had passed from that point. A lot of my people that knew me and knew that I was breeding so much fish in that, and had seen my fish room, said, you know what, you should open a store. You know, they said there's not a lot of variety around, a lot of rare fish, and that's all I needed to hear to set that dream from back when I was a little kid about opening my own pet store. You gotta remember, at this time I was working 80, 90 hours a week in construction. I was 6 o'clock in the morning till dark every day, didn't matter, 7 days a week. So this was gonna be a big challenge. I had to figure out where I had to make cuts to try to even fit this thing in. So after a discussion with my significant other and explaining what I had in mind, she said, you know, if it's your dream and you want to go for it, go for it. She backed me right from the beginning. So I rolled back my hours. I started off, I didn't have a lot of money. I didn't want to go to the bank and get a lend of money. I could have easily done that, but I've always learned to start rough and just work hard and build it. That's what we did. We had a little bit of savings. I took that. I rented a 1,700 square foot warehouse. That was a total disaster. We spent probably a month between my family, my kids, Sonia, very, very close family friend of mine, and we would spend there all evenings and nights. And you gotta remember, I was still working all day doing construction, and we finally managed to get it cleaned and painted. I grabbed 40 gallon fish tanks out of my basement, out of my breeding group of tanks. We brought them into the store. I contacted a local wholesaler for dry goods. I brought in 5 products to start. And you'd have about a humble beginning. I just had some like water conditioners, some fish food, some nets, some gravel cleaners, and some scrub pads. And that's what I opened my door with. And there was, in the beginning, like I said, there was a lot of days we never seen any customers. I would work construction every day during the day. I would open up my store from 6 to 9 in the evenings, and Saturdays and Sundays. A lot of days go by, we'd never see any customers, no money would come in. But the good thing was, because we held our own businesses at the time, we didn't take any money out of the company. So every cent of money that we brought in, we would just roll it back in. So at the end of the week, if we had an extra $200, we would sit down and figure, okay, we got $200 to work with. What can we bring in for $200 that will help take us to the next level in sales? And we would do that week after week after week. And like I said, you know, there was some weeks where we couldn't expand our product line. There were some weeks that it jumped 3-4 times what we even had. So lucky enough, with me doing all the breeding at home, I was able to fill all those tanks with my own stock that I was breeding. So I didn't have to worry about bringing any fish. Unbeknownst to me, at that time, there was a lot of stores, unfortunately, that were closing in the industry, which is always sucks for any industry. The positive spin was that I was able to pick up a lot of used equipment cheap. Tanks, filters, etc., etc. So that helped me actually build my store to we were running for about a year, and at the end of the year I looked at it and I said to Sonia, so like, either we're coming into this industry at the right time or we're fools. Because like I said, there were stores shutting down everywhere, and some of these stores were big names, like massive stores. So after a year of us being full-time and having success and some hardships, this wasn't easy. You know what, there was a lot of times where to be successful in anything, you have to give up something. Myself and Sonia, we were working 85 to 90, 95 hours a week in the store. We were here 7 days a week, from daylight till dark, every day. You know, that takes a toll on your family, it takes a toll on the kids. Our kids were young growing up, but we were paying the price. After 1 year, another bay in the same vicinity of us opened up that was available. We moved into it because I knew I needed to go bigger. We turned into a 4,300 square foot store. We ran with that for a while, then the bay next door opened. We grabbed onto that bay. Now we're almost 9,000 square feet. We went from the start off with about 30 tanks to well over 700 tanks. We went from those 5 products to now I think we're running over 2,500 SKUs, and we're still growing. Every day it's a challenge, it's business. With online sales and stuff, you really got to buckle down and try to keep it tight, keep it working. But you know what, I have to owe a lot of this to my staff and customers. Because you know what, without your customer base supporting you, you don't have a business. And without the good staff that's supporting you too, and everybody's pushing together, you wouldn't be able to make this dream come true. To me, it is a dream. I'm very humbled by that. Some days it's a bit of a nightmare, but most days it's a dream. And you know what, I really appreciate everybody's help and everyone's support. And I hope to see you guys for years and years to come, and I hope we all can grow together. So hopefully you enjoyed this little video and you kind of got the background of where our company started and how we got to where we are, and hopefully where we're going to go as the future proceeds. You know what, thank you for that time. Really appreciate it. This is Eric from Fish Addicts, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.